If the Texans are focused on getting one of the top edge guys and they don't want a quarterback, then there's one trade that makes sense heading into the draft, and it's with a division opponent. Let's go inside the locker room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we
All right, let's pretend that the smoke is true and the Texans do not want, or they do not feel comfortable taking a quarterback not named Bryce Young in this draft and making him the franchise quarterback. If that's the case, then there's a trade that makes sense. It is the locker room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Central on Sports Radio 610. So under this scenario, we have to pretend that the Texans like Tyree Wilson and they like Will Anderson, and they don't feel comfortable after their evaluation drafting Will Levis, CJ Stroud, or Anthony Richardson with the number 2 overall pick. If that's the case, and they are focused on getting one of these edge guys, then there's one trade that really makes the most sense. And as a matter of fact, it makes a ton of sense. And we can go back to 2017 when the San Francisco 49ers were in a similar situation. D'Amico Ryans was beginning his coaching career. Kyle Shanahan was overseeing things. And the San Francisco 49ers decided, obviously not the smartest decision, but they decided in hindsight, Mahomes and Watson probably should have just drafted one of them there. But they decided they did not want a quarterback. And they traded back one spot with the Chicago Bears. They got a third-round pick to go from 2 to 3, and Chicago went up and got their quarterback. If the Texans want Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson, then maybe not trading back to 3, but trading back to 4 would make the most sense. We've already had Nick Caserio say he's willing to trade within the division. So based on that, he's saying he would be willing to trade with the Indianapolis Colts and the Tennessee Titans. Now, if the Texans are willing to trade way back, then all bets are off. Then we can have a real party and we can have some fun. But in this scenario, we're only trying to make it to where the Texans get one of the edge guys, and they maybe add a little bit more to what they've got in the draft. So you're looking at 4. The Indianapolis Colts are currently drafting at 4. If you are set on the edge guys, you already have Arizona open for business right now, and they're willing to trade with the team that wants a quarterback. And if that happened, Indianapolis would be leaped. And there's a chance that Indianapolis could miss out on whoever they like, whether it's Will Levis, CJ Stroud, et cetera. It's hard to imagine too many teams just saying, I could take either or. So if Indianapolis is set on getting the second best quarterback on their board, not named Bryce Young, then why don't they leap up to number 2 and avoid the Arizona drama with the Houston Texans? And then the Texans move back to 4, and they're going to have either Tyree Wilson or Will Anderson right there for him. Now, what would the price be would be the question. 2017, to move up one spot in a similar-ish situation, the price was a third-round pick for the Bears. Let's say that the Texans say, we'll take your second-round pick from the Indianapolis Colts, and the Colts move up to 2, you go back to 4. That would mean that the Texans would have 4 picks in the top 35, and they would get either Tyree Wilson or Will Anderson. And if the reports are true, and if the noise is true that they actually like Tyree Wilson more than Will Anderson, then this makes even more sense, because it's hard to imagine that Arizona or someone there is going to take Will Anderson. So instead of taking Tyree Wilson at 2, you get him at 4, and you now have 4 picks in the top 35. And the most important thing is you're sending a quarterback who you're saying you don't believe warrants being picked in the second round. You're sending him in the division. Now, some people will say, well, you don't trade a quarterback within the division. Okay, why not? What better place to send a quarterback that you don't believe is a franchise quarterback than in the division? And that's what the Texans would essentially be saying. A team that desperately needs a quarterback, a team that if they thought there was a franchise quarterback there, they would take him no matter what they thought of Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson. the Texans would essentially be saying, okay, Indianapolis, you can have one of these guys and you can invest in him because we don't believe in him. So if you trust your evaluation, there's really no team better to send Will Levis or whoever it is to than a team in your division. That's if you trust your evaluation. And if you like Tyree Wilson, you like Will Anderson, then you get the best of both worlds. You don't trade back too far to where you miss out on those guys, and you send that quarterback to the Indianapolis Colts. There's been a couple examples off the top of my head where teams have traded quarterbacks within the division. Caserio, when he was in New England, 2002, they traded Drew Bledsoe to the Buffalo Bills because they had Tom Brady. They thought Tom Brady was a better option. And I guess in 2010, Donovan McNabb went from Philadelphia to Washington. So if you don't think the quarterback's good, what better place to send him than in the division? Why not? What are you scared of? Why would you be scared? Especially if you are thinking about taking the edge guy. If you take the edge guy, then there's a chance Indianapolis just trades up a spot with Arizona and they get the guy anyway. So why don't you just scratch each other's backs, get it done, get the second round pick or maybe a third and some change, get your guy and send him within the division. So again, why does it trade with the Indianapolis Colts in this situation? If the Texans just want one of these edge guys and they don't like a quarterback, why does it make sense? Number one, you get your edge guy. You don't trade back too far. And you're either Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson away. Number two, you could potentially get 4 picks in the top 35, get a little extra sprinkle. And number three, you send the QB you don't believe in within the division. What better place to do it? It's one thing not to want to trade Deshaun Watson there because you didn't just randomly decide you wanted to trade Deshaun Watson. But in this situation, you don't like the guy, send him within the division. But it could be a real party, and we could see a trade back even further, or it could get really wild. And maybe the Texans just announce the name Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson without making any moves, or maybe they just fool us all. D'Amico Ryans goes Kyle Shanahan, and we're talking about a quarterback. It's a wild, wild time, but if the Texans are set on the edge guy, no team better to trade with than the hated Indianapolis Colts. Happy draft week to all. It's going to be a fun time. Got you covered on Sports Radio 610. Uncertainty as high as ever. No matter what happens, though, when it comes to this Texans game, we're all in this together. Happy draft week.
Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too.